After more than a year of investigating, the Republican special counsel overseeing the probe into whether President Biden willfully mishandled classified documents issued his final report, concluding that though there was some evidence to indicate Biden engaged in misconduct, the special counsel could not make his case beyond all reasonable doubt to a jury and therefore would not bring charges. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, before we begin, I just want to say I am still struggling a bit with a cough, so if I sound strange, like I'm going through puberty, please indulge me. We have several clips to play, but the top line is this. This investigation has been going on for a year. There were 3 parallel investigations, obviously into Donald Trump for his mishandling of classified documents, also into former Vice President Mike Pence, and then into President Biden himself. The probe against Vice President Mike Pence concluded months ago and concluded that no charges would be brought. And now we finally have the other shoe dropping with President Biden. So I'm going to play some clips of President Biden himself making some public remarks about the summary of this investigation, and then we'll dive into deeper detail.
First, the special counsel released their findings today about their look into my handling of classified documents. I was pleased to see they reached a conclusion I believed and knew all along they would, that there are no charges should be brought in this case. As many of you know, this was an exhaustive investigation, going back literally more than 40 years. 40 years when I became a United States Senator when I was a kid. I was a kid, 29 years old. Special counsel acknowledged I cooperated completely. I did not throw up any roadblocks. I sought no delays. In fact, I was so determined to give special counsel what they needed, I went forward with a 5-hour in-person interview over the 2 days of October the 8th and 9th last year, even though Israel had just been attacked by Hamas on the 7th.
All of this is true. So as we will go into the actual report itself, the special counsel Robert Hur, a Republican appointed by President Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland, did indeed reaffirm consistently that President Biden cooperated voluntarily from beginning to end. And as a matter of fact, when the final report was issued by Robert Hur, it was submitted to the White House for review because the president has the right to invoke executive privilege. President Biden, unlike Donald Trump, did not attempt one time to invoke executive privilege to conceal aspects of this report, indicating beyond comparison, he is simply infinitely more forthright than Donald Trump. Another clip here from the president.
But I was especially pleased to see the special counsel make clear the stark differences between this case and Donald Trump. As the special counsel wrote, and I quote, "Several material distinctions between Mr. Trump's case and Mr. Biden's are clear." And by the way, this is a Republican counsel. Most notably, after given multiple chances, this is the continuation of the quote, he returned classified documents and avoided prosecution. Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. This is the continuing quote. According to the indictment, he has not only refused to return documents for many months, he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then lie about it. In contrast, Mr. Biden turned in classified documents to the National Archives, the Department of Justice, consented to a search of multiple locations, including his homes, and sat for a voluntary interview, and in other ways cooperated with the investigation. That's the distinction.
100%. Again, these are material, important differences because right-wing media is going to run roughshod with the decision by Republican Special Counsel Robert Hur and the decision by Jack Smith. They're going to claim that this is a 2-tier system of justice, even though there are fundamental differences between the 2 cases, which, again, we'll get into. But, again, I want to play another clip from the president.
Bottom line is the special counsel in my case decided against moving forward with any charges, and this matter is now closed.
It is closed as a matter of law, although I'm sure that Republicans in the House will be interested in bringing in Special Counsel Robert Hur for a public testimony, because there are things politically to milk from this as far as the Republicans are concerned, just as they did with Robert Durham. I think it was Robert Durham. Durham is certainly the last name, a special counsel who was investigating the Mueller report and the Mueller investigations into Donald Trump. They thought that there would be political hay and political theater to be made of it, so they brought him in. I would not be surprised if Robert Hur was subpoenaed and is going to testify before a Republican-led House committee. I would not be surprised at all. As a matter of fact, I'd be shocked if that didn't happen. The thing is, though, there are going to be, and we're probably going to do another video about this, because there are things that Robert Hur says in this report which are politically damaging President Biden. And you've probably seen it if you are aware of the story at all. But I just want to emphasize, this is from the executive summary. Our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. These materials included, number one, marked classified documents about military and foreign policy in Afghanistan, and two, notebooks containing Mr. Biden's handwritten entries. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to go into full screen here. Mr. Biden's handwritten entries about issues of national security and foreign policy implicating sensitive intelligence sources and methods. FBI agents recovered some of these materials from the garage, offices, and basement den in Biden's Wilmington, Delaware home. However, for reasons summarized below, we conclude that the evidence does not establish Mr. Biden's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Prosecution of Mr. Biden is also unwarranted based on our consideration of the aggravating and mitigating factors set forth in the Department of Justice's principles of federal prosecution. For these reasons, we decline the prosecution of Mr. Biden. And then go into some of the details there. We don't believe this is evidence is sufficient because jurors would find a reasonable doubt for one or more several reasons. When he served as vice president and when Afghanistan documents were found in Biden's Delaware garage in 2022, his possession of them in his Delaware home was not a basis for prosecution because as vice president and president, he had authority to keep classified documents in his home. Several defenses are likely to create reasonable doubt as to such charges. For example, Biden could have found the classified documents in his Virginia home in 2017 and then forgotten about them soon after. This could convince some reasonable jurors that he did not retain them willfully. At the place where the Afghanistan documents were eventually found in Biden's Delaware garage in a badly damaged box surrounded by household detritus, suggests that the documents might have been forgotten. And this is the damaging part, okay? This is where, again, I'm probably going to dedicate a separate video to it. In addition, Mr. Biden's memory was significantly limited, both during in his recorded interviews with Ghost Rider in 2017 and in his interview with our office in 2023. And his cooperation with our investigation, including reporting to the government that the Afghanistan documents were in his Delaware garage, will likely convince some jurors that he made an innocent mistake rather than acting willfully, that is, with the intent to break the law. And it goes on like this. The fact of the matter is that there are plenty of innocent explanations as to create reasonable doubt for why Biden had the documents. Now, the memory thing is going to play a political role in this, but again, that's a matter for a separate video. CNN also, again, just emphasizes the distinctions between the Trump case and the Biden case because this is what the right wing is going to latch onto. They're going to be like, okay, listen, these cases are basically the same. If anything, Biden's is worse. Why is Biden not being charged and Trump is?
Where they vary is the meat of the matter, Brianna. They vary because Joe Biden voluntarily alerted the public and, of course, special counsel, at that time the DOJ, that he had the documents in his possession. Trump had to be subpoenaed and continued to fight it after that. His case diverges in terms of disclosure potentially and, of course, the behavior after they asked him for the documents back. Biden, on the other hand, the way in which the documents were kept is a very key part of the decision not to prosecute here.
Not to mention the fact that there is some legitimate question about the medium of some of the classified documents. So again, some of the classified material was in President Biden's recollections, like in his notebooks, right, in his journals. Now, President Biden could make the case, as President Clinton made the case, with the Clinton tapes, the sock drawer tapes, that he legitimately believed that because it was classified information that he wrote down in a journal, that he was entitled to keep those because those were personal diaries. There's a good faith basis for that, right? So again, these are all the complex reasons why Robert Hur, a Republican, declined to prosecute President Biden. Then the DNC War Room put out a really good summary situation. So report concluded no prosecution of indictments for Biden, whereas Trump was indicted on 40 felony counts, including obstruction of justice. Biden's team self-reported documents and immediately alerted law enforcement. For Trump, archives found documents and law enforcement had to issue a subpoena and a search warrant. Biden directed staff to return all classified documents found immediately. Donald Trump suggested that his attorney hide or destroy documents the government had subpoenaed per the DOJ. There was no attempt to destroy evidence by President Biden. On Donald Trump, allegedly, there were attempts to delete security footage. at Mar-a-Lago to conceal evidence, according to the Department of Justice. Biden voluntarily gave law enforcement access to his homes for searches. DOJ had to obtain a search warrant. For Trump, documents had no cover sheets, including classifications, were inadvertently packed among personal materials. Whereas with Trump, documents had cover sheets plainly indicating that the material was sensitive and top secret. And again, I really want to emphasize this as well. I'm actually going to pull it up in the report itself. For Donald Trump, there actually was, the special counsel notes this in his report, but there were fundamental differences, okay? So it's right here. It's not our role to assess the criminal charges pending against Mr. Trump, but there are several material distinctions between Trump's case and Biden's. Unlike the evidence involving Mr. Biden, the allegations set forth in the indictment of Trump, if proven, would present serious aggravating facts, most notably after given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution. Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, but also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it. In contrast, again, this is from the Republican special counsel, Biden turned in classified documents to the National Archives, and the Department of Justice consented to the search of multiple locations, including his homes, and sat for a voluntary interview and in other ways cooperated with the investigation. Okay? In reaching our decision, we did not consider every circumstance in which criminal charges against a former president or vice president for mishandling classified documents may be warranted. But on the facts of this case, the fundamental interests of society do not require criminal charges against President Biden. For this additional reason, applying the principles of federal prosecution set forth in the Justice Manual, we decline prosecution. Again, folks, this is huge. MAGA and Republicans are, rather than engage with some legitimate concerns actually presented in this report, they're going to create a false equivalence. And actually, they're going to go further and say that Donald Trump is subject to a witch hunt. They're not. Even this Republican special counsel, who goes out of his way to slam President Biden quite often in gratuitous ways, again, subject for a different video, he acknowledges that there are material, substantive differences in the Trump case, which make the Trump case that much worse. So anyone who says, if you prosecute Trump, you're obligated to prosecute Biden, that's simply not the case because there are material differences between them. But that's the situation. The case is closed. No charges will be brought against the president, but there may be political consequences for this concurrently and in the future, and we'll talk about that in another video. Let me know what you think in the comments.